This is exciting.
It is.
Okay.
I'm gonna move the microphone away from my mouth a little bit to stop that the breath sound.
Okay, we're live. I'm going to share the link to Facebook.
I'm in the channel. Oh, there we go. Live now. Boom.
So can you hear the music?
I can hear the music.
Okay, cool. All right, good. So we're live. So haven't officially started yet, but we'll
Cool.
see.
So there's about an 8 or 9 second delay.
Yeah, that's expected.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna turn off the sound from the YouTube video, so I'm not hearing us echo through.
Yeah, good idea. All right, this is awesome.
This is cool.
Okay, so how do you want to start? Do you want to start with like an introduction, just say like this is welcome to the aggressively opinionated stream, blah blah blah, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'll let you, because you're going to be the one on video. I'll let you be like the main host.
Okay, cool. Let's do
So
that.
you take the lead.
All right, well let's go live. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So switching over to the main view, we've got two viewers. One of them is me, and one of them's you, probably. So here we are,
More
officially
than likely.
inaugurating the aggressively opinionated podcast.
Fantastic.
So Sean versus Internet versus Griffin Boy. Today's fantastic topic. I think it's officially won by feminism. I think through the poll. That was a definite victory for that. But I think we'll use that as a starting point, as a springboard, and kind of maybe see what else we can talk about. Because feminism is fascinating, but it's also very limiting. There's more that we can talk about, I think.
I think it will branch into a lot of things very quickly, because just thinking about it today, I just thought, there's going to be highlights in things like the gender pay gap. We'll probably end up going into politics, and in politics that'll lead us to Hillary versus Trump, where we also have very differing opinions. So that'll very quickly escalate on that side of things. So
yeah,
I think feminism is a good grounding point, but it leaves so many different avenues for us to go down and kind of get aggravated about.
As has been evidenced by our Facebook threads. It's definitely a subject that kind of instills both. Certainly in terms of your friend list, it gets you get a lot of traction out of those kind of posts, especially if somebody like myself or what's his name, the other guy,
Nick.
Yeah, when there's fucking infinite threads coming out of you. Yeah. So anyway, you
just need one aggressively opinionated white dude to go against the grain, and everything explodes.
Exactly. All right. So in terms of the stream, what you're seeing on YouTube at the moment, are you happy with that? That's for now. It's you. It's going to rotate pictures. I took a few of your profile pictures, and that's people know that it's you anyway.
Fantastic. I love that you chose one with a repeal shirt for the feminism one. That's going to work out well.
Yeah. So then, okay. So obviously while we're discussing that a topic. Obviously today's feminism, but if we're talking about things where we have examples that we want to show, like YouTube clips or whatever, I've created a second scene where we can have this that shows just shows my window, so I can play a YouTube video or an article or whatever. We can and look at highlights of that and talk to points on that. So that's
fantastic.
Feel free, if you have something that you want to share or whatever, just pop it in the Facebook chat, and I'll share it on the screen here so we can talk about it. But anyway, to get to get the ball rolling, just make sure you've shared the video on Facebook as well.
I have indeed.
All right.
Of course.
Excellent. I can see we have 3 viewers at the moment, which is great. No idea who.
So 2 of us plus 1.
Yeah,
excellent.
A random stranger on the internet. Okay, so feminism. Where, or you would call yourself a feminist?
I would, yes.
Yeah. Okay. How do you define feminism so that we can kind of agree that we're talking about something that's on the same wavelength?
Yeah. So for me, it's one very, very simple concept, and I would just take the dictionary definition, which is, the advocacy of women's rights on the ground of equality of the sexes. just equal rights for men and women across the board.
Okay, so I agree with that, but there's a but. So
there has to be, otherwise the podcast would be very short.
You're going nowhere. So by that definition of feminism, if you're going to look at it in a box as a dictionary definition, I agree with that. I would happily be labeled a feminist myself, because I agree with that principle, the idea that equal rights for the sexes is paramount importance. So that, I think we can certainly agree there as a springboard. However, I think that's not really what we disagree on. What we disagree on is how feminism kind of infiltrates the culture and is on a more broad platform. Like, if we talk about what's being taught in universities, how blogs and media outlets present the kind of the academic stuff that's coming out of the feminist and women's studies side of things. That's the area where I'll certainly have major disagreements with you on, in terms of what feminism actually means, because I think the dictionary definition, by that definition, if you think about it, technically within the West anyway, is there not equality of the sexes? Are we actually arguing about something that's not correct?
You can't say, are we arguing about something that's not correct? Because you're just instantly assuming your point is 100% correct.
Yeah.
But I would disagree. There is not equality of the sexes in the West.
Okay, how isn't there? In the eyes of the law, for starting point.
Okay. In the eyes of the law, in black and white, yes, it would say that the sexes are treated correctly, but in practice, that's not what we see. And I think a big one, which obviously has become inflamed quite recently, would be in the media when you find out about rape cases, rape conviction rates, how men are treated in trials about rape, how women are treated in trials about rape, and it does come down to gender. Yes, the law is black and white and says, this has to happen and this has to happen, and there's a burden of proof here, but it's obviously treated very, very differently, and guys getting away with rape, guys getting lenient sentences. And, unfortunately, it is a fact. Well, I would say it is a fact that women are treated far worse in the law when it comes to these situations.
Right. So, in terms of lenient sentencing, what do you mean by that? Like,
Brock Turner would be a classic example.
Okay, so explain that then. Explain what.
So, Brock Turner was discovered by 2 witnesses raping a woman. And
was he the swimmer? Was that?
That's the guy.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was discovered raping an unconscious woman behind the dumpster.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And he was, there was 2 witnesses. It was not beyond any reasonable doubt that he had raped her.
Yeah.
But when it came to the sentencing, he got off because the judge said it would ruin his swimming career. So the judge did not take into account the effect this would have on the woman. Instead, he decided what effect it would have on the man, and decided he didn't want a negative effect on the man, so the man got 0 jail time. Basically got away with rape.
Like 100% got away with it?
Well, it depends what you are going to define now as 100% got away with it,
No, I mean, so he wasn't convicted, is he?
No, he was. No, I don't know if he has a conviction. I don't think he has a conviction.
And was it as simple as that? Was it a case that the judge said because it'll ruin his career as a swimmer?
As a swimmer,
I find that hard to believe. Like, that does seem really out there.
The words of his father was that it is not fair to ruin Brock's life for 20 minutes of action. That's me paraphrasing now. That's not verbatim. It is paraphrasing. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article here. There's a criminal case where he was convicted on 3 counts of felony sexual assault. He sexually penetrated an intoxicated and unconscious 22-year-old girl, referred to as an Emily Doe. He was caught by 2 Stanford students who said that they saw it. And he was released the same day after posting $150,000 bail. He was indicted on January 28, 2015, 5 charges, 2 for rape, 2 for felony sexual assault, and 1 for attempted rape. He was arraigned, pleaded not guilty to all 5 charges. On October 7th, after reviewing the results, the 2 rape charges were dropped by prosecutors. and he was convicted of the 3 remaining charges of sexual assault. They carried a potential sentence of 14 years. The prosecutors recommended 6 years in prison with probation on a moderate county sentence, and Superior Court Judge Aaron Persky sentenced her to 6 months confinement in the Santa Clara County Jail, of which he served half. Sorry, he did serve 3 months.
Okay, so there was conviction, there was jail time.
There was jail time of 3 months.
What else? He's got the sex offender.
He is on the sex offender registration. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here. Okay. So this is a fair point. It does seem like it certainly seems like it's cut and dry. He was caught, witnesses, like in a grand jury, criminal case. Everything about that looks like slightly unfair. That he was only given 6 months, but he served for good time. Yeah, good behavior or whatever.
Yeah.
Presumably. So that's fair, but how do we fix that? How does the feminist argument fix that? Like what is the actual solution to that?
Well, the solution to that is that the judge who has given that sentence is held to account as to why is he releasing this young white dude.
Tell me it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh.
No.
Wouldn't that be fucking
that would be
outrageous?
No, the judge was a guy called Aaron Persky, age 55, from Berkeley, California. Obviously, I don't know a lot about him, didn't really look into him much, but I do remember he did make a comment afterwards when asked about why the sentencing was so lenient. It was because Brock had a very aspiring career as a professional swimmer ahead of him, and it wouldn't be fair to put him in jail for so long that it would ruin that potential career.
Yeah, so I'm just reading here, the judge was a member of the lacrosse team himself, and blah blah blah. Yeah, had been a student there too. Well, I mean, okay, so that's fair. I don't disagree with you on that one. That the situation there is a bit outrageous and unfair, but that I don't see how that really isn't like what can we do to change that? Like how does feminism change that?
Well, feminism isn't saying coming forward. Feminism isn't necessarily saying, hey, we have a solution. What they're saying is there is an issue and we want to bring light to the issue and we want these issues to no longer exist. You're saying this guy got out of trouble because he was a guy sentenced by a guy. We've seen it happen a lot. Brock isn't a once-off case. This tends to be normal. Rape conviction cases are very low. Guys who are convicted of rape get away with very light sentencing. There was a guy.
They do if they're white.
They do if they're white. Yeah. Exactly.
It works the other way.
We can bring the race issue into it as well. But in terms of rape, there was a guy convicted, I think it was last month or the month before, in the UK. Again, he was convicted. It was for raping a 14-year-old girl, but he served 0 jail time.
Good. How old is he?
His age, I'm not sure. Young 20s again, I believe. Could be wrong about it being in the UK. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there you go. A man who tied up a 14-year-old girl will not go to jail. No, it was in the US. Sorry. It was in the US. Virginia Judge Timothy Haller stayed prison sentence after asking to hear some positive things from the defense about the man.
Okay. So this is something
he was 19. The guy was 19.
This isn't something I really think I have a disagreement with you on. I think that the leniency in that kind of sentencing is probably it's undeniably unfair. It doesn't feel like the victim is getting any kind of justice in that sense. That said, I don't think Brock Turner, as an example, he's not I don't think he's going to have much of a life outside of this now. This is his reputation is sealed by the kind of the media attention on this. It's regardless of whether he's
say that now, but
he's one case. He's an outlier.
3 or 4 years, he changes his name. No one recognizes him, and he lives a perfectly happy life, never having the repercussions of this ever hit him again. On the other hand, the girl that he raped, has gone through that traumatic experience, and we've seen from multiple studies on sexual abuse survivors that it leaves a permanent, lasting effect. It does damage that will never be repaired.
I don't
And
disagree with that. Yeah.
and essentially, I would say he's gotten away with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
3 months prison time. Yeah, okay. In the United States, having a conviction is difficult, but again, you just get to the point where a white guy with enough connections and enough money won't really hold him back that much.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it's that easy if you're on the sex offenders register, though. Like, you can't just change your name, and you have to wherever you go, you have to like announce to your neighbors basically, and you can't go within whatever range of schools. So I'm not arguing about the fact that he's gotten away with a lenient sentence. I think, but I do think ultimately this has negatively impacted his life
Yeah, it has. I'm not going to die. Yes, there is some negative impact, but if a guy murdered a person and served, a year in prison, then walked out, like, oh, well, he's branded a murderer the rest of his life. But is that really justice? The murderer's family have to live with the rest of their life. Sorry, the victim's family have to live the rest of their lives with this murder in their minds forever. They've lost a person.
Yeah.
And there comes a point where you say, yeah, fair enough, he's gotten a little bit of a punishment, but it's completely not fair. And it's seen time and time again, young white guys, and I don't really want to bring the race thing into it. We can discuss that at another time, but it is young men getting away with rape.
Yeah.
And it's almost been normalized. And that's before we even get to the fact that there is such low rape conviction rates. Even when a rape conviction does happen, it isn't fully prosecuted or carried through.
Fair. That's fair. So in terms of, like, if we were to look at it in terms of bringing in the race issue on it, so the convictions, and so when we talk about things like false accusations and that kind of thing, when you look at the statistics from if we like narrow it down to the African American side, the picture is quite different, because they do get convicted quite highly. And they do also then tend to serve higher prison sentences, and they also do get proven to, like, after the fact, it gets shown through DNA testing or whatever that they were falsely convicted.
Right, but I think that is a separate issue, because if you look at the conviction rates of young black males in America versus young white males in America, you're looking at a completely different issue. Like, if you look at things like marijuana or stops for traffic violations, what young black men get versus young white men, that is a whole other 2 or 3 hour long discussion.
Yes,
about the problem.
It's definitely one that we've had before. But I think the disagreement we've had on that isn't necessarily about those rates or whatever. It's about the police brutality side of things, and death by police. How does Bryn not know about? Oh, sorry, I forgot we have actual people watching us as well. Men are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault themselves than be falsely accused of sexual assault. That's a fair statement, I think. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Who is Optiplex?
I have no idea.
Hi, Optiplex, whoever you are.
Optiplex, is there any chance we can get citation of that? Just a source somewhere? I think that is definitely something we're going to have to discuss. Yeah. Is the false accusation, because I know you've definitely.
So my issue with the false accusation side of things is that the problem isn't so much how many, the ratio of false to true or versus the conviction rate and all that. It's the fact that false accusations happen. They are a thing, regardless of how minuscule they are in comparison to the true rape and rape convictions. It's something that has to be factored in when you are listening to, when there isn't much evidence for an accusation. Like that has to be considered. And testimony is good. I have no issue with that. I have no complaint with that. But you can only take it so far. You can't convict somebody with just circumstantial hearsay. It doesn't,
there's a difference between hearsay and an eyewitness account.
Yeah, an eyewitness account that's uncorroborated, though, isn't much use. If you've got at least 2 people corroborating it, like in the Brock Turner one, then absolutely fantastic. Even if there hadn't been any other evidence at all, the fact that there's 2 witnesses is it's a completely different ball game. But when it's literally just somebody saying something in a Facebook post, or emailing somebody's manager, or that kind of thing, that's where it's like, okay, you need to have some kind of standards of requirement of evidence before you can go.
I do believe that, yeah. But I think what you're kind of trying to get at here is you're clearly trying to reach for the Judge Kavanaugh case.
Well, yeah, we need to address that as well, because that's
okay.
a prime example of where we disagree.
There needs to be evidence, but number one, the Judge Kavanaugh case was not a court trial. He was not on trial for rape. He was not on trial for sexual assault. He was being interviewed for one of the most powerful positions in America, and it was the job of the Senate to find out, is there any reason that this man should not be trusted with making life-altering decisions about the citizens of the states? And a woman came forward and said, yes, he sexually assaulted me. Mm-hmm. Now, what you're going to get on is, she didn't have proof.
Well, that's the issue. Like, why would you believe somebody if they're just telling you a story?
Okay, well, I would break it down to, motive. What motive does she have to be lying? What reason would she be lying?
We don't need to. That doesn't matter in this case, because we're not trying to prove.
But it kind of does, because you are implying that she's lying. You're saying, well, no, we don't have to believe her. Her saying it isn't enough, which is implying that, well, she's lying.
Yeah. Because well, she could be.
She was an eyewitness to her own sexual assault.
But by that argument, so was he. You're saying he's lying. It's just him versus her.
Yes. And then I go back to my previous question. What is his motive for lying? Well, his motive for lying is that he doesn't want to be branded for sexual assault, and he doesn't want to lose this job that he's going for.
But that's also his motive for not lying.
No, it's not his motive for lying. He has no motive to tell the truth. If he sexually assaulted her, he would not have a motive to tell the truth. Because if he comes forward and says, yes, I sexually assaulted her, he loses the job, a criminal trial happens, and he possibly faces jail time. Of course he lies.
Fair, but alternatively, if he didn't, then that's exactly his motive.
Exactly. So, okay, let's assume he didn't. All right, let's assume he didn't sexually assault her. Now she's coming forward and she is lying, because we're assuming he didn't sexually assault her. Then what is her motive for lying? Why is she lying right now?
Political.
Political how?
She presumably is a Democrat and doesn't want a Republican to have that kind of power in the judiciary. That could be it.
And you think she would go through the trauma and the basic abuse that she went through just for that, just to stop him getting that position? You think it was worth it while for her to do so?
Maybe not. Who am I to say? I don't know. Possibly. There may have been other incentives. She could have been paid to do it. Maybe not.
Okay, now we do need to look up a study, because there was a study done on both of those claims you've made, either paid or political, to make a false sexual accusation. And it was done around the time of Trump being campaigned. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you want to Google search for it there, or if I'm going to search for it, because I don't want to go to dead air while we're both searching. But women were offered very, very large amounts of money. It was between $10,000 and $20,000. Just random women who had at some point, it could be corroborated that they were in a situation where they were in the same building as Trump, they were on a night out as Trump. They were offered this money to make a false accusation. And all they had to do just was say yes. The study was, would any woman come forward and say, yeah, I would? And then there was I was about to say solicitor in America, a lawyer who posted a public ad saying, I will give $50,000 to any woman who can make a claim of sexual assault against Trump. Now, he wasn't even asking them to lie. He was just saying, will anyone come forward for $50,000 and say they were sexually assaulted by Trump, and I will represent you? So the incentive there obviously is for someone to lie. He was looking for someone to tell the truth, but obviously there's huge incentive there to lie, and nobody came forward. 0 people came forward. One woman came forward and said,
what was the incentive to lie?
$50,000.
Right.
You said political or money. Now, surely if a lawyer goes out and says, we're going to take down this Republican, all I need you to do is tell me about a sexual assault that happened. If there was political motive, if political motive was enough for this lady, the one who accused Judge Kavanaugh, then surely when Trump was running for president, a man who is way more hated than Brett Kavanaugh, I keep saying, Way more hated than Brett Kavanaugh. I just have the two names in my head now.
They're both pretty hated at this point, I think.
They are both very hated. But if that was enough incentive, if politics, as you said, was enough of incentive, there would have been volunteers in that case. If money was enough of an incentive, there would have been volunteers in that case. And this woman is not bad off.
Yeah, but the situation with that is that there doesn't matter that she had the benefit of actually having a history with him. She knew him, and that could, in a sense, is a more likely candidate for somebody who would be willing to accept that kind of thing. I'm not saying that she did. I don't know.
Do you think there are no women who have a history with Trump? There are no women who know Trump?
There are plenty of women who've come forward and accused Trump. What do you mean?
Exactly. But when it was offered with money or political incentives for other people to come forward, no one did. What I'm saying is, you're saying the impossible incentives this woman had to lie, politics or money, have been not proven, because it is anecdotal, it's not a large enough sample size, but it has been shown to not induce false accusations from people. So when I say to you, man, I think, why would this woman come forward? You saying, oh, it could be politics or it could be money, I don't accept that as realistic. In the real world,
I don't accept it as realistic either. Maybe there were other motivations for doing it.
Such as?
I don't know. I'm just I know as much as anyone else does about this. Basically,
okay.
That's the situation. None of us actually know who is telling the truth and who's lying.
Why not apply Occam's razor here? You cannot think of a reason, and we cannot show a reason that is realistic why she would be lying. But can we show reasons why she would be telling the truth? Why what she's saying is the truth, and why he would be lying if he had done it? Then yes, everybody's reasoning becomes very clear, becomes very sensible, and makes sense. But all of a sudden, everything fits.
That's not how it would. That's not how you establish truth.
I know that's not how you establish truth, but I remind you again, this wasn't a court case for his conviction. This was, is her story credible? And
I'm not arguing that it is. I'm just saying that it's like, if fair enough, if you think of this as just a glorified job interview, the idea that this is giving him a very bad reference. What I took out of this whole thing is, regardless of what happened with that situation and what the implications of that are, the way he comported himself, I think his reaction and the way he gave his testimony, to me, was what put me off him. So I'm not a fan of Brett Kavanaugh, just to clarify. I don't think he should.
I think very few people are after how he conducted himself.
But for me, the issue, the accusation of rape, that it just doesn't. There's just not enough substance to it for me to be able to go, yeah, he did that.
How do you get that substance? How do you find that substance?
But that's the issue. There isn't any. Her testimony is just, she didn't know where it happened, when it happened. She didn't know who was there. People that she named as corroborating witnesses didn't corroborate her story, and in fact had no idea what the hell she was talking about. So
whoa, you're kind of overstating it there. That is not what they said. They
didn't say they had no idea
what she was talking about. No, the two main witnesses, she said it was possible, but they didn't remember. Now, Brent, I don't know about you, but how many college parties could you say for sure who was there and who did what and who went upstairs at what time? Because I can't remember a house party from 2 weeks ago who went upstairs or who left at what time.
The problem is, that's not a corroboration. There's nothing firm there.
But none of them denied it either. None of them said, oh, that definitely didn't happen. They said they couldn't confirm because they didn't remember. And it was a long time ago.
Yeah, Optiplex says loads of women came forward against Trump. Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, loads of women came forward against Trump. Yeah, but none of them responded to the ad with the incentive of politics or money. Is what my main point was. And with Kavanaugh, the point I'm trying to reach here is, you're saying there wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't enough to show she had done it. If you want to find that out, there should be a criminal investigation. And that's what people were asking for when she made this claim. She wasn't asking for them to throw him in jail. Nobody was calling out for prison sentences or lock him up. People were asking for there to be a proper criminal investigation to find out if there was evidence. But the problem was, there was no proper criminal investigation.
How exactly would you investigate that, though? Something that happened 35 years ago with no witnesses.
Well, I'd start off probably by interviewing the person who made the claim and interviewing the defendant, and then,
But to do that, she would actually have to make a charge.
And she did make a claim. She came forward and she made a claim. She said she wanted there to be an investigation. She agreed to a polygraph. She called for an FBI investigation,
And
and
she
she
got
was
one.
okay. Come on. When I say called for an FBI investigation, I mean a real one. I don't mean 2 days where none of the main witnesses
But
were
I'm trying to understand
interviewed.
what you mean by an investigation. Like, what would interview? Like, they would. She gave testimony. He gave testimony. What more
That
information
was
would
not
they have
that was
found?
not testimony within the criminal investigation. She
Okay.
gave testimony to the Senate in regards to his nomination, in regards to something that had happened to her. She was not giving testimony to the FBI in regards to a criminal investigation. And I think to find out the truth, to establish whether she was telling the truth or not, an FBI agent who has been trained in criminal investigations and how to find the evidence would ask far better questions than Senate members who are just trying to find out if this bro is going to join their party or not.
I don't think so, man.
Oh, really?
I don't think they would have found any more.
You think a 70-year-old member of the Senate is just as qualified to ask questions in a criminal investigation as an FBI agent would be?
But for there to be a criminal investigation, she would have to file charges. That's much.
She did. She asked for an FBI investigation into the event.
Which she got.
She didn't get a real one, though, is what I'm saying.
Okay, but what's a
Which
real? How is it not real?
Well, in any criminal investigation, usually the person making the accusation is interviewed and the defendant is interviewed.
But they
And
can't
anybody
interview her as a. She didn't charge. There was no charge. She could that. If you're going to accuse somebody of the crime and demand an investigation, you have to say, okay, this person committed a crime against me and report it.
which she
didn't
did.
do. She didn't.
I find it very hard to believe that you're saying she did get a criminal investigation, but she didn't bring charges. And then when I say it wasn't a real criminal investigation, you say she didn't bring charges.
The FBI don't investigate just basic criminal cases. They're not like, oh, I murdered somebody and the FBI gets involved. It's not as simple as that. The FBI got involved because
it was a federal case, because you're looking at the nomination of a Supreme Court judge.
No, it was requested by the people during the hearings. They were like, you have to. They were trying to get him on the spot and getting him to agree to it, which I don't think he did in the end. But like, they got it. They got what they wanted, and it still didn't turn up anything. Like, I'm not entirely sure what more would have happened, and without her having filed charges. She has to have filed charges for it to go any further anyway, and she didn't.
Okay, but if she didn't file charges, why was there an FBI investigation?
Because that was what the Senate called for.
Okay, so the Senate brought forward an investigation. Yeah. The investigation did not interview the person making the claim. It did not interview the defendant. It did not interview any of the 3 people being named as main witnesses. What do you mean it didn't have to? What type of investigation is it? So what did they do?
I honestly don't know. I have no idea what that was all about. But I do know that it was done as requested. See, personally, I'm not a policeman, but I don't think this is something that can be investigated. It's literally just a story that somebody has told in front of a group of people with nothing else. Like, what else can be investigated?
When I go to a police station and say I was assaulted last night, they say, okay, yeah, here's a guy telling a story in front of a group of people. You know what they do? They go out and they investigate. They don't go, well, you don't really have any evidence. You're just a dude telling a story.
And what do they do when they investigate? They probably potentially go to the scene of the crime. They don't know where the scene of the crime was in this case, as far as I know.
They do know where the scene of the crime was.
Do they?
They do.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, because Kavanaugh revealed it because he had it written on his calendar.
Did he? Interesting. She didn't know where it was, though.
No, of course not. Bryn, do you remember the house parties you were at 20 years ago?
I would know where I would know where they were.
Get the fuck out of town.
Yeah. Well, they were like friends' houses.
Your freshers week. Your freshers week. What was the first party you went to on your freshers week in college?
Oh, I didn't go to college.
Oh, okay.
No.
When you finished, did you finish your leaving cert in Ireland? Or
it's South African equivalent, yeah.
South African equivalent.
Yeah.
Do you remember what pub you went to when you graduated?
I remember we went on the whole class basically. We booked out hotel rooms in a beach resort and had parties on the beach. Like, I do remember that quite well, actually. Quite fondly. It was a good time.
What was the name of the hotel?
Oh God, Oh, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I'd definitely recognize it if you showed me a picture of it.
So, one of the most important parties of your life that you can remember the whole class booked out for your graduation.
I remember it was a timeshare.
Hotel.
It was a timeshare. I remember.
And you want this woman to remember the exact location of a random party that wasn't really that big a deal.
Well, put it this way: I would, if you dropped me in that town, I would be able to find that hotel.
I'm pretty sure if you dropped her in the college campus, she'd be able to find the house as well.
Well, then fair enough. Fair enough. But okay, so going back to what would be investigated. If you were a policeman, put yourself in the position of an investigator, what would you actually do? Like, you can't, there's nobody to...
First thing I would do is take her into a room, sit down and ask her questions and do a full proper interview. Then the second thing I would do is bring him into a room and ask him questions and do a full proper interview. They would name witnesses as they do so. And then I would get those witnesses and bring... No, it's not what happened.
They gave testimony. Both of them testified.
They didn't testify. They testified in his judicial hearings in front of the Senate. They did not testify in front of any criminal investigations.
But would they have said something different?
They might have, because the questions would have been different. The questions would have been to dig deeper and try to find out exactly what happened by a trained professional who knows how to dig and knows what questions to ask. The Senate are not trained professionals. They're a bunch of old men.
Okay, but can you give me an example of a question that would ask, that would in any way establish truth in this situation?
I have not gone to criminal detective school, so I do not know the questions.
Well, I would I'm going to go out on a limb here as a layman, and I'm going to say they wouldn't be able to ask any questions that would find out anything. There's a 36-year...
Why are we sending FBI agents to criminal detective school at all? If they're just going to ask the same questions as some guy who's been serving on the Senate for 60 years, why are these guys going to any schools at all?
Because
you think,
in normal circumstances,
going to detective college at all?
In normal circumstances, this kind of thing doesn't have a 36-year gap. And there is some kind of corroboration. There is maybe another witness. Or if there was evidence taken at the time, new technology has come to light, there would be things that you could do. But in this case, there's just nothing. There's just her word against his word. And I don't think that's enough to make any kind of logical, rational decision on who is lying versus who isn't. I think Brett Kavanaugh might have been lying because he seems like a liar, like the shit that he was talking about, all the drinking game stuff and all that. Like,
well, he was shown to lie. He lied under oath. It was proven that he did lie under oath.
Exactly, but there's not enough to prove that he was lying about the sexual assault.
Exactly, and you don't think it would be worthwhile to try find out?
But how? How?
By doing a criminal investigation where you interview him.
But ask any policeman what they would like. I don't think there's enough evidence. There's nothing to they have to use basic rules of evidence. How can you find enough
evidence if you don't look for it? Nobody looked for any evidence.
I think they did, and I think if there had been any evidence,
this is the whole point. And this is where it breaks down to the feminism. Because Brett Kavanaugh is a powerful white man, and he is still very powerful. He's become a fucking lot more powerful right now. But he was a powerful white man. This was a woman making a claim. She sat in front of a Senate of mainly men.
You think there weren't powerful people trying to not get him into position? Do you think,
Of course.
Right.
But the problem was there was more people on the side of getting him into the bar. He did have the president of the United States pushing him forward, another man who seems to have absolutely no problem with sexual assault by his own admission.
Yeah.
So the issue here is that women are treated unfairly in the process by men who get away with it.
There was nothing unfair in that process. She literally got to testify in front of the entire nation.
She did not get a fair process, and that is my issue. I do not see how you can call that a fair process.
Oh, I don't think
I go into a police station.
I don't think any other person would have gotten that. If you'd come forward and said that he'd done something to you, you'd have been laughed off. You'd been laughed off. But because she had some, there's a small connection in terms of her history and having gone to the same school with him. They were like, oh, this is this could be something. So, and it turned into a media circus. It didn't, but there was nothing. There isn't. I guarantee you, the people on the side of trying to get rid of Brett Kavanaugh would have pushed damn hard to get what they could. But there wasn't enough, and they didn't have enough. You don't have enough, and if you don't have enough, the justice system doesn't care. It's just going to
Because
go.
it wasn't about people making a judgment. The vote on whether he should be criminally investigated or not had all of the Republicans vote for no, he shouldn't. All of
Yeah.
the Democrats vote for
Yes.
yes, he should.
Yeah.
And the Republicans control the House, so they stopped it.
Mm.
So the issue isn't here.
Wasn't there one Democrat that went?
There was one Democrat went against, and there was one Republican went against. So you had, but again, the numbers were it was,
It was pretty well split.
51-49, and there are 51 Republicans in the House. There are 49 Democrats in the House. Yes, one on each side went the other way, but at the same time, it was just people voting party lines.
Yeah, that definitely just put the whole thing in, like, it made it a joke. It was like, you'd think that there'd be more diversity of opinion, even on the Democrat side. Like, you'd have logical, rational Democrats who'd be like, there's not enough evidence here. She's probably not lying, maybe, but like, there's just not enough. I have to, but they didn't.
There's not enough evidence. But you find evidence by having a criminal investigation, and they didn't have a criminal investigation
because she didn't lay charges. You have to. Did she come forward and charge him?
Well, okay, we need to look up whether she did charge him or not, because clearly, whereas I don't think it's all that relevant, because there was a criminal investigation, but the criminal investigation wasn't a properly done investigation. It was a 2-day investigation that did not interview any of the witnesses, the person making the claim, or the person the claim was made against.
Yeah. Do you know that the FBI investigation wouldn't have come down either way?
What do you mean?
They don't actually make a judgment call. The FBI just basically ticks boxes. It doesn't actually. You can't essentially take the FBI investigation and say this is the facts. Now we've proven that he's guilty or not. They
might not have proven it, but they might have gotten to the point where they said, okay, actually we have found there is something to this story, and then maybe it would have gone to local law officials who would be able to bring it forward, or it would have gone to the to the
maybe, but it didn't, because they didn't find anything.
The American equivalent of the state prosecutor is, the DA or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I think another thing about the case that kind of made me more skeptical about it is that it wasn't like was the other stories that came out and how extreme they were in comparison to what her story was. Like, her story, it was a lot more believable because it wasn't just out there. With the other one, there was a gang rape one. I can't remember what the third one was. But like, then I was like, this is starting to sound like there's a lot more made up stuff happening now. And like, it was believable, horrible, but there's still plenty of room for doubt. But once they started talking about this extreme stuff, I was like, that's where it really started to ring alarm bells for me. I'm like, that's
fair. Okay, yeah. And I don't want to backtrack too much, going back over all points, but it's just or equivalent of Jamie, Optiplex. We need to find out who that is. Optiplex, will you please tell us who you are? Has pointed out that Ford's lawyers.
Optiplex. Interestingly enough, when I worked for Dell,
offered a list of 22 witnesses, and you yourself said earlier with the Brock Turner case, I was happy there because there was 2 witnesses. When Ford's lawyers offer a list of 22 witnesses and the FBI talks to 0 of them, it's fucking Jack, obviously. Which automatically means Bryn is going to discount everything.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so there you go. A list of 22 witnesses were proposed, and they interviewed none.
Witnesses? Are you telling me? Wait, hang on. Are you saying they were witnesses to the sexual assault? I don't think that's the case. That's highly
22
unlikely.
Witnesses who could corroborate her story of he took her upstairs, which he denied happened.
Okay, that's fair. But I don't see I don't think justice was an issue here. I think the due process kind of blocked this, because that's what due process is supposed to do. And I don't think
due process didn't happen.
It did.
Due process was blocked. No, due process is a criminal investigation and talking to witnesses and investigating whether there is any credence to the claims. None of that was done.
But like, what credence would they have? Like, I don't understand what you would have. What?
Okay, again, going back to it's very hard to prove 100% because there would be no DNA evidence. There would be no, there wasn't any eyewitnesses. But what happens if, she says this happened? I went upstairs. I was pushed into a room. Brett Kavanaugh was in there. This happened. She described the situation. He says, I wasn't even at the party. Or if I was at the party, I wasn't drinking. And if I was drinking, I didn't go upstairs. And then you have 22 people who say, he was at the party. He was drinking. He did go upstairs. And he is an aggressive drunk. Do you think now that there might be some credence to the claims?
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so then you investigate. You take him into a room with FBI investigators.
You can't investigate without her charging him. Like
you keep going back to that part.
Yeah, but why didn't she?
They did perform an investigation,
yeah,
right?
But they
did perform an
investigation. You were the one
investigation.
saying that they didn't, though. It wasn't good enough.
I'm saying it was. Yeah, it wasn't good enough because a 2-day investigation where you interview no witnesses, not the accuser and not the person being accused, that is not, to me, that is not a real investigation. And I think if, say, for instance, you went into a Garda station in Ireland, you said, I was assaulted last night. They said, okay, cool, yeah, walked away, didn't talk to you, didn't go to the crime scene, as you said, would be a pretty simple step, and didn't try find the guy, and just came back and said, we have investigated and we have found there is no credence to your claim. Case
so what did the FBI do then? What was their investigation? If it wasn't,
I don't know.
Because, like, personally, I don't think there's any way that anything can be proved in this case. There just wasn't enough to do an investigation on. Like, if you took this to, like, take the FBI out of it, because the FBI wasn't doing what you think they were doing anyway in terms of investigating. That's not their job. If she had charged him and an investigation had been done in a proper police procedural way, I just don't think there's any way that they would have anything to build a case on.
Okay, well, what do you think about all these priests in Ireland, who sexually assaulted people 20, 30 years ago, and they are being convicted? You say it's impossible to convict someone of a crime that happened 30, 40 years ago where there was only 2 people involved. How come it's happening now in Ireland?
Good question. I haven't been following those to any kind of degree. I think in most cases I'd say there's more than one accusation being leveled at the priest anyway. I'd say it's very unlikely that they'd be going after one where there's only one witness or one victim and no witnesses. If they have enough to build a case and they can bring it to court and then charge them, yes, absolutely. And in that case, you've got the victims actually charging the priests as well.
Okay, so what you're saying is with the priests, you are willing to listen to the witnesses, listen to the victim, but with Judge Kavanaugh, listening to the victim isn't enough.
I'm absolutely happy to listen to the victim. What are you talking about?
But you said she's lying.
I said I don't know whether she's lying or not. I said, I don't know. There's no way to know. And if nobody else has corroborated her story as she's telling it and giving the same details, or having witnessed something even if it's tangentially related, at least more than I was at the same party. Like, there needs to be, like with the Brock Turner case, for example, that's way more cut and dry. And in that case, if we're talking about priests and their victims, there potentially would have been other victims who would have come forward. And you end up with a Bill Cosby situation where you've got like 30, 40 people
where it starts to snowball,
telling the exact same story, which they couldn't all have had known the same details of, that kind of thing. Then it becomes more obvious. And you also might have a case where the priests are actually confessing, or, I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened. I don't know. I'm not following that at all, so I don't really know. But if there's evidence and if it can be corroborated and it's enough to satisfy a jury, have at it. But that wasn't the case with this one.
But what happens if there's 22 witnesses and you don't interview any of them?
She didn't charge him. If she charges him, then there we go. Have at it. But I don't think any lawyer would take that case.
And why not?
Because it would probably lose.
And why would it lose?
Because there's not enough evidence.
They would have at least investigated.
I get that. But like, if you're a lawyer and you want to win a case, if you have a case like this, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but I wouldn't try and defend this, or try and prosecute this, because there's just not enough evidence. Her lawyers,
according to the Irish Times, he was charged. She did bring charges forward.
What charges did she bring forward?
Sexual assault.
And they didn't investigate?
They did. This is what I've said multiple times. They did a 2-day investigation where they did not interview any of the witnesses or the people she named.
Hang on. Let me just give me a link to that. Where I'll just bring that up on the screen.
Just type into Google, was Judge Kavanaugh charged? I'm just clicking through all the different articles just to see is there a listing of. And also, you said if there was more. 2 women have come forward with allegations of sexual misconduct against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. So I'll send you a link to that one. So there was more witnesses. There was more allegations. It wasn't just him. Sorry, it wasn't just her. So we are now saying there was multiple people claimed he sexually assaulted them. There was a list of 22 witnesses that were not interviewed by the FDI.
Okay.
And yet, still.
So during the confirmation, he was accused of sexually assaulting blah blah blah. Currently, blah. He responded to accusations. Sent the nomination to the floor.
And also there is
these allegations. Where's the charge?
I just sent you a link to an article there.
Dun, dun, dun.
Also, there is evidence in therapist notes from 2012 and 2013 in which Blasey Ford says she was raped. I don't know if she named him in those notes, though.
There's no. So we're saying the charge word doesn't appear. Like, it appears as Feinstein has referred the case to the FBI, which is in charge of background checks for nominees. There's nothing in this article about being her actually charging him with a crime.
All right, I think we're getting too bogged down on.
Yeah, that's fair point. Okay, well,
minor points here.
Okay, so if we move, hang on, let me just close the door. Bear with me a second.
No problem.
All right. So let's move away from the conversation of rape and rape accusations and bring it back down to the basics of what feminism is.
Okay, yeah, because at the start you were saying that you had an issue with what you think feminism is portrayed as in the media and in the world. So why don't you tell me, I explained my position on it, why don't you tell me what your position on it is?
Right, so if we elaborate on my position then. So the way I see it is it isn't about equal rights for women anymore, because I think personally I view that as a settled question within the West anyway, in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of employment law, and that kind of thing. It's something that you can't say that there aren't equal opportunities. Like a man and a woman can both go for the same job if on a basic level. There's no distinction there. So if you view feminism as a movement towards that goal, towards equality, towards equal access to medical help, employment, housing, independence, that kind of thing, it feels like that's something that has ultimately been achieved, and it leaves the position of a Western feminist without the core thing that they would be pushing for, the core drive for their belief system is kind of solved. Like, so it then moves along. It like finds other things to kind of focus on. So you get the crazy things like the man spreading on trains and that kind of thing, which then becomes the focus of attention for the movement. And to my mind, that kind of takes away from everything else that's been achieved. It kind of belittles the movement. I don't like. How do you view that? Something like that.
I can understand why you would say, there are certain small things that they address that I don't find worthwhile, but I don't see how you could say that those little things are enough of a reason for you to say, I don't want to be called a feminist.
But that's exactly why I wouldn't want to be, because I wouldn't want to be associated with that.
you wouldn't want to be associated with the movement because some people in it focus on small points that you don't find relevant.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to say I'm happy to the main principle of equal rights for women. I'm happy to support that, but I'm not happy to support the idea that men aren't allowed to spread their legs on a train, or
Well, I would agree with you there. Like, I think, yeah, you should be. I don't think it comes down to man or woman. I think you should be allowed to sit whatever way makes you comfortable, as long as you're not hurting someone else or.
That's just a bad example. It's one that came up again recently because of a fake Russian thing where they pretended to be using acid on people.
That's right. Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of that kind of thing, and that to me is indicative of a movement that's losing focus. That hasn't got the kind of this would be. I'm sure we'd be having a different conversation if this was Saudi Arabia or India, where you can objectively say that those rights aren't enforced. Women don't have the right to do anything without their husband in Saudi Arabia. I can see a purpose behind a feminist movement, and unfortunately, they actually are literally killing feminists in Saudi Arabia. But you don't really see a lot of push to help the movement on that side of the aisle. It's more all the focus is on. It just feels like it feels like a lot more pettiness on the Western side of things, and
okay, you've opened up like multiple cans of worms there. So I'll try. I should really have a pen and paper. I'm going to grab a pen and paper just so I don't want to interrupt you. So I do want to let you finish your points, but I need to address each of them. So just to first address the Middle Eastern issue. So would you say then that if you were living in the Middle East, you would then be comfortable to call yourself a feminist?
Yeah, if it was a movement that was geared towards correcting the wrongs that I perceive. So as a Western person who believes in equal rights, that is something that I can clearly get behind, and I can see a purpose to it. And the goal of feminism hasn't been achieved there. It hasn't. They haven't enshrined in law this equality that the West. So for how bad it is in the West for women, it's nowhere near as bad as it is for women.
Okay, yeah.
Almost everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you with that statement. But that's like saying to some homeless guy on the street in Dublin, like, oh, I don't really want to help you with your homelessness because it's not as bad as if you were living in Russia and gay and homeless and on heroin. So you don't want to help the feminists in Ireland because they don't really have it as bad as the feminists in Saudi Arabia or Iraq, say, for instance.
I think you'd need to work on that analogy, because a homeless person on the streets of Dublin, addicted to heroin and diseased and starving, is going to be pretty much in the same position as a homeless person on the streets in India or anywhere in the world. It's like that. You need a better analogy.
That is a person in Siberia.
Well, maybe
that
not
is a person
Siberia.
Like in Prague,
cold,
being homeless is a very, very different issue than being homeless in Dublin.
Yeah, so fair enough, but it's like. I think you need to work on that analogy.
All right, fair enough. I'll tell you what, I will cede that point. My analogy was not fantastic. You got me there. But are you still sticking with your guns that feminists in Ireland do not deserve to, shouldn't be feminists because they don't have it as bad as feminists in India or Iraq?
No, I'm happy. I don't mind that if somebody wants to identify as a feminist, I have no issue with that at all. I wouldn't, because I don't see it as being something relevant. Certainly not in Dublin anyway. There's no way that you can say that what they're arguing for now is in any way as important as, say, what the suffragettes were fighting for. Like actually being able to vote, actually having your voice heard. That's something that feminism has achieved. That goal has been resolved.
Yeah. Okay. The goal of getting the vote has been resolved. Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay. Which is what you're saying as the dictionary definition of feminism, which is equal rights. Like
equal rights across the board for both sexes.
Well, what is the right that they don't have?
Well, one of the issues I would look at, well, if you want to take let's say the United States, For example, one big one that is very, very glaring and obvious is that Viagra is free on American Medicaid, but birth control isn't. And then if you want to take it to Ireland, is that a lot of male medicines that center around reproductive are considered, they're taxed in the same way that necessary medicines are taxed. But when you look at something like tampons or sanitary pads in Ireland, they are not taxed as necessary products, they are taxed as luxuries. So therefore, men are getting nicer treatment from tax laws than women are. In America, it's happening. In Ireland, it's happening. And I don't think you can say to a woman, well, you should be paying more tax than men because you don't have it as bad as women in India.
That's fair. That's fair. So what's the difference in... So you talked about tampons and toilet paper. Sorry, what was the other thing was?
Sanitary pads.
Yeah.
The other option over tampons. Those products
in Ireland... They're both luxury items, are they?
They are taxed as luxury items. They're not taxed as necessary medical items that a woman would need.
But they're not a medical item. Are they?
I would kind of argue that they are medically necessary. Now, I'm not going to break down the definition of medical with you.
But I think that's
they're certainly not a luxury item.
Yeah. Well,
they are. I would argue that yes, they are an item that is medically required.
Okay, so you mentioned Viagra as well. So Viagra isn't taxed. Wait, it's available for free on Medicaid. Sorry, is what you said.
So so the American example would be female birth control versus Viagra, and the Irish example would be the tampons and sanitary towels tax.
Okay, so Viagra thing I can understand if it's available for treating the condition. If it's treating a condition which is presumably erectile dysfunction or what's the other word for it? Impotence. Mm-hmm. That is a legitimate medical issue, though. Why wouldn't that be available on Medicaid?
Okay, but birth control is also used to treat legitimate medical conditions. Birth control isn't just used to stop babies.
Okay, what is the other legitimate use?
To control, I don't know the medical term, I don't want to sound too crude, but women who have troubles with their periods in terms of large amounts of pain, large amounts of bleeding, it can, I do have, I don't want to name names, I do know someone who was at the point where they would lose a week of work every single month due to heavy bleeding, loss of iron. They would have to change their diet, they would have to take pills, and the only way they could regulate their monthly cycle to the point where they could work was with a birth control pill, which helped with the hormone balance. It's like any drug, that affects the hormones, that affects the balances within your body. She was able to find a birth control pill that on a monthly basis helped her cycle, and she went from losing a week every month, bleeding, being in massive amounts of pain for a full 5 to 6 days, having to take iron supplements, change her diet and everything, which cost a lot of money. Taking a week's holidays every month costs you a lot of money on top of all the stuff you had to buy. She could go back to living a normal life. And to me, I would say, yes, that is 100% a genuine medical need, and I would say there's a far greater medical need than getting an erection.
I can't really argue with you on that one. To be honest, I don't know enough about why there would be so on the US side why they would have a distinction with birth control versus. So birth control to me does seem like something that would be a medical thing, regardless of whether it was just for birth control and for no other reason. It seems like that would be a perfectly legitimate reason to want to claim something. But that's a question. That's not really a question that you need feminism to answer. That's a question that people can just petition their government and petition that you.
But it is 100% feminism, Bryn, because it's medication for women is not being treated as the same for medication for men, and it's not just one example. It's not just you messed up with the birth control thing. We're seeing multiple examples where women are not being treated the same as men,
and they
are not getting equal rights.
But they're not the same. They're not we're not talking you're talking about men's sexual health and female sexual health are two very different disciplines.
They are. two different disciplines, and why is one of them being given to men for free and the other not being given to women for free?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, so I will concede that. Like I would if it was up to me, I'd be like,
treated unfairly,
it seems
and we're
perfectly
getting
logical. Yeah.
Of that. This is feminism, Brian. It's women are not being treated the same as men, and here's an example where it's happening, and it's just one example. There are other examples, and also, like, when I describe myself as a feminist, I do it not just, oh, I want all women to rise up and take power and get all these things back. I mean equal treatment for all genders, which is men, women, and the gigantic rainbow of in between, people who identify as trans, people who identify as another gender. They need medication. They need things that helps with their mental health. Another thing for me is men's mental health. I think men are also treated very, very differently in society in an unhealthy manner, with things, like the masculine expectations of men.
Yeah.
We see massive suicide rates. Again, this is one that's huge in Ireland. It's huge in America as well.
It's huge everywhere.
It is. It's huge everywhere. Men kill themselves at a far higher rate than young women. And why is that? And I think a lot of evidence has shown, again, I don't know if it's 100% proven, but a lot of the evidence would show it's because of how men and women are treated differently as children. And that, again, is sexism. It's women are treated differently because they're women. Men are treated differently because they're men. It is not equality of genders as they grow up.
You can't have that. You can't have ultimate equality of genders because genders are different. They're not equal.
I agree with you there. And I think people who just want a 100% utopia where you treat absolutely everybody exactly the same, that is ridiculous. But I think it's not ridiculous to ask for fairness and ask for people to be treated with the same expectations of them as people.
Okay, I'd agree with that. So on the Irish side, then, what was the
you're agreeing with a lot of points. It kind of sounds like you're a feminist.
No, I have disagreements with a lot of what happens in the name of feminism, but I get the principles. I get the principles of feminism, and I agree with them. But there's
I disagree with a lot of things that are done in the name of feminism as well.
But look at it this way. I agree with a lot of things that I've read in the Bible, but I'm not a Christian.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because there's certainly elements in the Bible that I can find a lot of morally reprehensible stuff. And
I'm going to call you on one of your analogies. I
Go on.
Also don't think that's a lot of people like. Okay, so there's some movements that you're very uncomfortable with, and some of them I agree with you. I would be hugely anti-Catholic. I would consider myself a Christian, but super anti-Catholic. You don't like the concept of Christianity. You don't like the concept of, say, feminism. You may not like the concept of Black Lives Matter. But I think when you say something like, I don't like Christianity, you can point at a core group that is setting policy and setting rules, and therefore you can say, I don't like the rules and policy they are setting, so I disagree with their group. I don't want to be identified with them. And I think that's perfectly fine, and that's why I think it's good to say you're anti-Catholic, because I will not stand by an institution that has a power group that is willing to let things happen that they have let happen. But when you look at feminism, there is no core group. There is no feminist government dictating policy and saying, we're going to go out there and we're going to combat manspreading.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one, because...
you think there's a Grand High Feminist Council?
No, it's not so much that there's a Grand High Council, but there is a definite dogma, and there's a definite... Certainly, like obviously you're not a fan of Jordan Peterson or any of the intellectual dark web people.
That is definitely another debate.
Yeah, that's going to be another whole can of worms. But a lot of what they're saying is legitimate in terms of the kind of...
They are saying, who's they?
So the intellectual dark web guys. So you've got Jordan Peterson, you've got
Shapiro,
Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan, like Steven Pinker. He's not really. He'd be more. He's just an academic. But
dude, if you're counting Joe Rogan as your grand high lords of intellectuality, you set the bar pretty low. I like Joe Rogan. Don't get me wrong. I like Joe Rogan. But to describe him as an intellectual thought leader...
But he is, though. There's no denying that he is, because he's produced... Essentially what he has done is facilitated the creation of this loosely affiliated group of people. Obviously not himself on his own.
Because he's amazing at marketing.
He's amazing at marketing, but he's also good at... he's good at what we're trying to do right now, which is which is talking about complex.
Which is why we've taken his format.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is useful. This is good. It's like you can have long conversations where, so like in terms of where we go wrong on Facebook is that it devolves into an argument, and it's just like somebody will type something, boom, that's done, and then somebody will say something else, boom, that's done, and there's no kind of real discussion around the actual points that are being made, and it just quickly devolves into a shouting match, especially once other people get involved in it, and then they're adding their 2 cents or they're disagreeing, and the conversation gets sidetracked to a different thing. So this kind of thing, and this is what Joe Rogan has brought, is because he's not stupid as well. He's good at talking, and he has opened up a lot of avenues for these people to reach new audiences, and this is something that I've been following for a long time now, and I think it's fascinating. But the academic community is going through a significant crisis, and the crisis is partly because of ideologies like feminism that have that where it's all about your identity and who you identify as, and where you are in the privilege stack, and these what kind of grievances you can claim to that the patriarchy is against you, and that kind of stuff is being formulated in an academic world and then being disseminated around through the college and then through the broader kind of blogosphere and into the journalist side of things as well, where you get these clearly biased articles coming out in the New York Times, and so there's definitely a central core where you can point to and say that's where the bad stuff that's coming out of feminism is coming from.
Okay, so fair enough, you can point at a source for these bad things, but I don't think you can say that the academia in the United States are controlling feminism and have a control of feminism, or is that what you're saying?
I think they do. I would say they are, very much so. Like, I don't think it comes from anywhere else, because generally in the broader world, most people aren't really putting much thought into the kind of stuff that's coming out of this world. Men are it's more traditional in the broader world. Like, you have the men being the historically viewed as the producer, and the woman would have the family, and the core change around that hasn't come from society itself. The academic community has driven that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that changing that isn't beneficial, because I think it is. I don't think, while I agree with the likes of Peterson in terms of the idea of the family structure is very important, like having a mom and a dad raising a child together, or a dad and a dad, or a mom and a mom. Like, I think doing it by yourself is a bad idea, because and
he said to the single father,
I'm one too, man. But like, I'm not allowing my child to grow up in a world where there isn't a father figure.
No. I was being facetious there.
Yeah, no, but it's a good point. It's not an invalid point. But so for me, I don't. The other issue I have with labeling myself as a feminist is I don't like labels generally. Like, I'd say I'm an atheist, but I don't consider myself part of an atheist group, or it just doesn't. That's not the kind of person that I am. I don't say, oh, I'm a Democrat, or I do call myself a liberal. I think of myself as a liberal, though I have conservative views about a lot of things. But it's not it's not something I do. I can't say I'm a feminist because because these are the things I agree with about feminism, therefore I'm a feminist. I can say I agree with these principles that feminism seems to espouse, but there's an awful lot of other stuff that I really, really don't agree with, so I won't associate myself with that.
But I don't see the conflict there. I think you can be a feminist and say, I think there are problems with feminism, and in fact, I think it would make you a better feminist.
But I don't want to be one.
Great if you came forward and said, I am a feminist, and I really want to push the important things that we're pushing, and I want us to start ignoring the bullshit stuff like manspreading and all that crap. The things that you have a problem with, you can highlight and disagree with. Just because you disagree with some of the points of feminism doesn't mean all of a sudden, oh, I'm not a feminist. Because to me, that someone, when they say I'm not a feminist, it either means, which sorry to label you, I think it means they have a poor understanding of what feminism means, or at worst, which I hope isn't true, it means they do believe in inequality of the sexes. They do want to treat trans people different. They do want to treat women different. And when I say different, I mean as a lower case, not respective to their gender.
Yeah.
So for me, I think when you say, "Oh, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this, but I don't like this," like, well, that doesn't stop you being a feminist. You can still be a feminist. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. But you can't say I'm a feminist but believe I'm an atheist, but I also believe in a God. But there's plenty of groups that you can be part of and say, I am part of this group, but we have some problems. Let's fix those problems. And I think it would make you an even stronger feminist ally to do that.
No, but
because if you come forward and you say, Bryn, I'm not a feminist and I have issues with manspreading, anybody who is a feminist, you're instantly gonna, they're not gonna listen to you.
That's fine. I don't care about that, because the issue isn't that I don't want to be a feminist because I don't see the point. For me, it doesn't, the core things that feminism is arguing for are things that I already agree with, but you don't need to be a feminist to agree with those things. You've even kind of alluded to that.
Yeah.
So if you want equality or equal rights or, fair treatment of gay people, transsexual people, none of that is actually a requirement of feminism. You don't have to be a feminist to believe those things. Those are principles that can completely stand on their own outside of that label. You can label somebody who believes those things as a feminist, fine, but they don't necessarily subscribe to that. They don't have to. In the same way that you can believe that killing people is wrong, stealing people is wrong, and that you should honor and cherish your parents, makes you a Christian. But it does it make you a Christian? Sure, it means you agree with a lot of the Christian ideology, but you can also then turn around and say, I think Christianity is a load of shit. I certainly think the church is a fucking horse shit. Some of that stuff that Jesus talked about was interesting.
I don't think Christianity claims that, Christianity isn't based on, the requirements to be a Christian are be nice to people, blah, 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 blah. The requirements of Christianity, first and foremost, are believe in Christ. So once you disagree with that part, you're out. I think with feminism, the core concept that it's built on to be a feminist is, do you believe in equal rights of the genders?
That's the same.
So yeah, you have to believe in the core concept. And you're saying I can't be a Christian because even though I agree with lots of their concepts, I don't believe in their core concept. I don't believe in Christ. But what you're saying with feminism is that you do believe in the core concept. It's just some of their other concepts that you disagree with.
It's most of the other concepts, to be honest. But the idea that
when you say most, okay, you've agreed that you have agreed that there are issues.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to go into the pay gap because
that's a definite one. That's a great example. So pay gap, the affirmative action.
I know you're going to say it definitely doesn't exist, and I'm going to say it does exist.
No, it does exist. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It exists, but it doesn't exist for the reasons the feminists are saying. It doesn't exist for the reasons that the patriarchy is oppressing women. It exists because women make different choices to men. That
does account for a lot of it, but there is also an oppression, and it comes back to what I was saying earlier with the way they are raised, the treatment of men and different growing up. Why isn't there great women engineers?
Because it's not something they're interested in.
But they are interested in it.
Yes, but not to the same number of. If you look at the percentage of women going into STEM versus the percentage of men, you can argue that it's because it's a male dominated field and they're not invited into it and they're not given the opportunities. But that's actually not true. If you look at the studies that have this is a great thing that Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, which is the Nordic countries where they have hard encoded and pushed for equal access to these fields, and women just aren't doing it, regardless of how open and
because
level the playing field is.
The issue is not the gate happening at 17 or 18. The issue is the gate happening at 5 or 6, 7 or 8, 8 or 9.
If you think that Finland and Sweden and these countries aren't pushing for women to go into STEM and giving them every opportunity they can.
But the main issue, again, is not the treatment by governments or the decisions or the gateway path at university level. for me, the issue here would be a societal issue that happens at far younger. Like, I'm pretty sure. What ages are your kids?
My kid's 7.
7. Okay, so you sit down. Sometimes you watch cartoons with them on the Cartoon Network.
Mm.
Yeah, like when you watch those ads, like
Well,
the
sorry,
science.
no, I don't. We watch Netflix, but yeah.
All right, okay.
But I know the ads you're talking about. Go on.
Yeah, so when I have Cartoon Network on, and you only have to watch it for one afternoon, and it is horrible. Like my son is 4, so he's still very, very impressionable. And every now and then, at a weekend when he's very well behaved, I'll take him out and he's good, and bring him into the toy shop. And went into the toy shop last week, and he went up to the Playmobil section that had all the horses and the show jumping, and he went, "Ugh, those are girls' toys." And I asked him why. Why are horses and horse riding and show jumping? There is nothing intrinsically.
Yeah, I find that offensive as a horse rider myself.
Exactly, and I grew up on a
correct your child.
Like my mom still, my family, we still have a lot of horses at home. I've always horse ridden. As a child, it is a female-dominated area because it's marketed and pushed towards them.
I disagree.
I think it's the same.
I disagree. I think it goes the other way. I think the push has come from the market. And the market is the women and children who are interested in those things. And there's 100% factual evidence that boys are interested in things and girls are more interested in people. Like this is like the marketing isn't forcing little boys to have blue and fire trucks and things. The marketing is marketing those things because they know that's what boys want. And they know that horses and ponies.
Did you actually mean to say the word blue there? Because that is 100% disproven.
Well, the blue thing is like our culture has evolved it, and it's gone from one end to the other and flicked back and forth.
Yeah, because blue used to be the girls' color and pink used to be the boys' color. And what made that change was not a cultural shift. That was a forced change. Blue was forced upon boys and pink was forced upon women during World War I due to dye shortages and changes in the production of clothing. It was forced upon them, and now it has stuck.
But it's not.
So you can't tell me that boys are naturally.
Essentially, what they've done is they've made the choice, but like the color itself isn't necessarily relevant, really. The color,
but it is.
The color is only relevant to the marketers. They're using it as a way to easily differentiate between a product. But the fact that you painted a car pink versus blue isn't going to make a girl more likely to buy it. Like the girl is probably less likely to buy it because it's a car, not because of the color.
But look at all the Barbie dream cars. They're all pink. Girls buy them, and they love them.
It comes as part of the like if in that context, fine. You're buying it as an accessory for a product that creates the domestic bliss that they are interested in. Because that's. But if we lived in a world where cars didn't exist, but that's how the marketers are thinking about it. That's what they're doing. They're interested in.
All women want to be as young homeowners. That's their dream.
That's why they do Barbie's dream house. That's why it exists. Because it's what women want to buy. It's what little girls want to buy. It's like, oh, I want to buy a dream house. Like, obviously, there's little boys that do that, that want to do that too. And it's unfortunately repressed. But it's generally, that's why those products exist. They're not forcing girls to buy little houses. They're not forcing boys to buy.
I disagree because the example I was going to get to, based on the science one, was watching these ads. And mentioning the story with Peter was just because I saw the effect it had, which really, really upset me. But watching these ads, I will see products that are recycled. They will have a female version, they will have a male version. And one of the big ones at the moment is these sets, these science sets. And the one ad will come on and it'll be this science set with boys, and it'll be, do experiments that, show you how things break down, that burn things, that show you the planet. And then the next ad will be the same company, the exact same product, and you'll even see that the frame of the unit, they're clearly mass producing it. It's the exact same one, except this one is now pink. It produces the same chemicals, they're using a lot of the same stuff, but instead of you creating planets and molds of that stuff, you're creating jewelry. And you're using, and so the girls are interested in the science. They want to do the science stuff as well.
Sure.
They want to mess with these chemicals. They want to put them together. They want to understand how these compounds work. But why is it being pushed on them that when you're a scientist, your science produces jewelry? When a boy is a scientist, it produces this wide range of fantastic things like rockets and spaceships and cars. And I think it is pushed on them. I don't think you can tell me that a 4-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy oh, girls are just attracted to jewelry and boys are just attracted to cars and planets.
No,
Because
I'd agree with that.
because my
That's fair.
4-year-old son did not decide that he doesn't like ponies. I'm pretty sure, when he goes down to my parents and my mom puts him up in the pony and he will then decide whether he likes it or not. But I don't want him to have the image beforehand that ponies are for girls.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I can see where you're going on that. But having said that, ultimately,
Oh, I love, as we say that, a picture of a pony comes up on the screen.
yeah, subtle, yeah. But my issue there isn't so much that's being forced on them. I think the push isn't coming from the marketers as much as you think it is. I think the marketers are responding to a demand and trying to influence by associating the colors and associating with jewelry and that kind of thing to appeal to a specific market that they're trying to get to buy the product, and they know that their market wants that product because they've tested it. It's not because they're forcing it on them and saying, like, they've gone and said, literally gone up to a little boy and said, which do you want? Do you want this hammer or do you want this, I don't know, Barbie doll or whatever? And invariably, obviously there's outliers, but generally speaking, the little boy will go for the building thing and the little girl will go for the thing that involves people and playing with, and that's an undeniable difference in the sexes, and
but I think that is pushed on them. I don't think you are born with that.
I think you are. I think you're generally, most people are born leaning either side of that gender spectrum. You're leaning further towards one end than you are to the other, unless you're straight down the middle, and then you can be whatever the hell you want. But I don't think the marketers are forcing that on people. I think that you can't like, you're a salesperson. You can't force somebody to buy something without it having something that appeals to them in some.
Of course,
on some
but people can be trained to like or want something.
Maybe, but
as a salesperson, I know that, and you as a salesperson also.
But that's exactly what marketing is all about, I suppose, in many ways. But
exactly, it's making them believe that it's their own choice that they want this thing.
To a point, but I don't think it's as strong as you say it is. And the reason I say that is because of the evidence that contradicts what you're saying, which is where Sweden and fucking Finland come into it, where they literally have gender. Everything is neutral. There's no pink. There's no blue. There's everything is geared to not influence and not pre-program. And these differences still appear. They still arise organically out of not out of the marketing, and not, as far as I know, they're not even allowed to do gender specific marketing.
My question to that though would be, one, how long has this been going on?
For decades. Like, and
when you say decades can be 120 years or it can be 30 years.
At least 30 years anyway, definitely, because there's research.
And you're telling me that in Finland and Denmark, they have no outside influences. They don't have American culture hitting them. They're not watching American movies. They're not watching American TV. They're not seeing American marketing.
In terms of what happens in preschool and in play and in their own cultural marketing, they have done everything they can to remove that bias, and the bias is still there because the bias isn't nurtured. The bias is natural
to a lesser degree.
No, in fact, it's more. It goes the other way. They go even harder towards females being nurses versus men being mechanics. It's gone to the stage where they actually they're considering looking into like proper affirmative action in terms of getting more, so they can get more male nurses. The exact opposite of what you'd expect to happen has happened. So they neutralized everything and took away the programming, and it didn't fix it. It made it worse. There's less women going into STEM than they'd hoped for out of it. And this is something that it is counterintuitive, but it also in a way makes sense, because it means that people are on a fundamental level making their choices based on their own genetic programming, so to speak. They're not making choices based on what the culture is pushing them to. And it seems like the way the rest of the West is doing it might actually result in better kind of a better sense of equality in those kind of roles. So I don't think it's as bad as you think there, and I don't think feminism is actually fixing the issue there. In some ways, feminism might actually be shooting itself in the foot by making it worse, and it certainly is if you start talking about affirmative action and diversity, and like having a specific like the stuff that happened with the Demore memo, where he was saying he produced a paper saying there's an issue here. I want to think of ways to help to fix this, and then they took it completely the wrong way, and were like, oh, how dare you say that women want to be something that men don't want to be in there. And when he was actually giving them like pretty solid advice, and they went completely the wrong way. And it's because of feminism, because feminism looked at what he said and was like, oh, you're saying that women aren't good enough to be engineers. And it's like, that's exactly not what he was saying. He was saying
my argument would be that's not because of feminism, that's because of idiots.
Well, fair.
I am very anti-affirmative action. Again, for me, the equality of the sexes does not mean boosting women. It does not mean putting women ahead of men. I think affirmative action, like in a position where I hire people, if I was told I had to have quotas based on gender, race, sex, gender and sex being the same thing, whatever, but if I was told to have quotas based on something that isn't their ability to do the job,
yeah,
I think it would be damaging. I think it would be stupid.
Okay, well then we're definitely agreed on that.
I agree with you there, but I still think that, well, this started with, is the gender pay gap real? I think there are influences in the unfair treatment of men and women, or how they are treated as children, that influence their career paths, that end up in the long run with guys getting jobs where they make more money than women. And I think another factor that is big in it is that then in your career, women and men are treated differently. And one thing I can say that is definitely true, because I have taken a lot of classes on it, and we have a guy in the office who is solely responsible for it, is the discrimination that men and women face in decision-making processes that are based on long-term decisions, where women will be passed over if they are, in a long-term relationship, if they're married, if they're considered to be
what age they're at, that kind of thing.
What is described in one of our handbooks as birth risk.
Yeah.
And men are never ever screened for birth risk. Women are screened for birth risk. Whereas if it was me, if my partner was to have a child, I'd actually want just as much time off.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Again, that's another feminist issue. Men are treated unfairly in that place. Men do not get the same amount of leave as women, which again is inequality of the sexes. As a parent, you were just discussing how important you think a family unit is. The man should be able to have as much time at home with his children as the mother. So again, there is another issue where in career-wise, men and women are treated differently, and I think it affects the gender pay gap, because women lose these opportunities for promotion based on birth risk. And also, if a woman then is given 3 months maternity leave, and the guy is only given 1 week's maternity leave, 2 years down the line, he now has, well, he did those 3 extra months of work. He was there when this important project was on. She had to come back after 3 months, and she had to get back up to speed. He never lost any speed. His momentum kept going. She lost 3 months of momentum, had to come back, start again. So
I just want to stop you there for a second. There's a comment here that's interesting. So Varpu says, you have completely misunderstood Finnish gender neutrality, Bryn. Can you elaborate on that? Because that's a good. If that's true, how have I misunderstood?
Well, Varpu is Finnish, so
yeah, that's fair.
So hopefully she responds quickly, so we don't have too much dead time.
But anyway, you can carry on with your point.
Yeah. So I was basically pretty wrapped up in that. I think there are influences that the gender pay gap is real, and I don't think it's she's a woman, we're paying her less, he's a guy, paying her less. I think it comes from a lot of cultural norms that have been become expected, or decision-making processes, and those decisions and those cultural norms come from gender, and it's unfair treatment of gender that then results in, down the line, a woman earning less than a man. And if you take example A and example B, a man and a woman, he's earning more than her in the same position. He's earning more than her for the same position, and you say, somebody in your position would say, oh, it's not really real. I can break it down, show a fact. I can show that he has worked 6 months more than her, so therefore he's on slightly more money. Yeah. But then I could break it down and say, well, yeah, she took 6 months off for her child, and he didn't. And you say, okay, well, that was her choice to take time off. Well, it wasn't really, because she was made, she was given 6 months maternity he was not given 6 months maternity. So they
Right.
were treated unfairly based on their gender, which has now resulted in him earning more money. So the gender pay gap is real. It's just, what are the reasons for it?
Right.
And I don't think it just comes down to, oh, there aren't enough girls going into STEM because they're not interested in it. I think it's because there's an unfair treatment of the sexes. And like I said, it's not just she's a woman, pay her less. There just is an unfair treatment of the sexes that results in there being a gap.
So, in terms of the leave that men and women are given, I agree with that. I think part of what causes the pay gap as well is the difference in aggressiveness. I think in terms of the way men will go for promotions and push for more opportunities and push for things that is a gendered issue, but it isn't discrimination on the part of the company. It's more a case that it's just that in some cases women aren't being assertive enough for a competitive environment. And I think, again,
I've seen the studies on that. I've seen the numbers on it. I can't quote them now because I'm better at remembering numbers. But sorry to cut you off. One thing I would say though is, I think though that again comes from unfair treatment of the sexes, and with how men are expected to behave versus how women are expected to behave, and how they are treated if they don't behave like that. A man acting aggressively in an office pushing for a promotion is a go-getter. A woman acting aggressively in an office pushing, ordering people around is not a go-getter. She's a bitch. She's a hard ass. And I think it comes from a cultural a cultural misunderstanding of how people should behave in the office based on their gender. And again, I think it's unfair treatment based on gender. So again, we have an issue of people being treated unfairly based on their gender.
I don't think, like, if I was looking for, if I put myself in the position of a somebody looking to build a sales force or a research team or whatever, I would want. I'm just naturally going to be more inclined to pay attention to the person who is gunning for it.
Of course, yeah,
and that is.
I don't disagree with you there. Yeah. No, definitely.
Oh, but hang on, Varku's responded here. Language is gender neutral, but we're still marketed girl and boy stuff, put in groups and so forth. So it's not some gender neutral bubble over here. Okay, fair. There are some actual other cultures that has proven this gender programming doesn't exist. It's natural is bogus. Wait. Sorry, hang on. Let me understand that. The other cultures that have proven this gender programming doesn't exist. It's natural is bogus. Okay, so that's what cultures then? What other cultures have proven this is bogus?
We're going to have to put up a note because we don't have that little dude that Joe Rogan has off to the side, and we don't have the speed to be Googling things. If somebody's going to give us information, if you could also give us citation or sources, that would be fantastic.
Does YouTube block links though? Maybe it blocks links.
Block links within the comments? Let me just see if I can.
I'm going to try one. If Facebook works.
Oh, I'm not allowed to post a BuzzFeed article.
What does it say?
Oops, remove any web addresses and try again.
Okay, I'm going to take out block spam. Maybe that's what's causing it.
Well, what we can also ask is, I'm pretty sure everybody on this. Well, wait, we have a Facebook page and we have a Facebook chat for our channel, right?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
So people can post links in that.
That's great, actually. Yeah, I should monitor that. I think somebody just pinged me here. That's you. It's your Alexis, I think.
She pinged you?
Yeah, hang on. What did she say? Where's my message gone? I accepted her request. I need you to tell Sean to look at his messages immediately. I don't know when that came through. That was at like 10.
That came back. Yeah, that came through a long time ago. She's home. She's home.
Look at your messages immediately.
She needed the message immediately because she was getting the shopping on the way home.
I just saw the comment on your post there, Daniel Gilligan. Bryn, you're agreeing with a lot of what I'm saying here. It kind of sounds like you're a feminist. Drops. Yeah. I don't like labels. I don't like labels.
I don't like labels. All right. I gotta be honest, Brad, that's an hour and a half. That is way more than I thought we'd do. I thought we'd do about 45
Hey
minutes.
man, it's a good start. I think it's a good
It
start.
was it was a good chat. We didn't start calling each other names,
I don't think,
and
yeah, I don't think we
and
had
I
to.
think the reason we didn't is because you're secretly a feminist. You just don't like
Closet.
labels.
I'm in the closet on it. I haven't
Like
come out yet though.
you, yeah, like
No.
you really.
Well, like I say, like I agree with a ton of stuff, and I agree with the core principle. The core principle, like you're an asshole if you don't agree with the core principle. But I don't think the core principle necessarily is it defines you as like by definition. If you believe that, then you can be considered a feminist. But I don't think you have to consider yourself a feminist, because you can just be. I think men and women should be treated equally. That can be a completely separate principle outside of anything else that goes on within the feminist movement. And like the idea of wearing a fucking vagina on my head and that kind of stuff, like I don't like that kind of group think, and that to me is just like, no, like it's just not cool, man. It's just not cool.
I'll agree with you there. And like one thing that I don't want to get into in this show, most definitely because it drives me fucking insane, is people who just quote logical fallacies in an argument and think it's a mic drop.
Yeah.
So do not come back at me with the no true Scotsman fallacy. But like I think not that I'm not going to say that's not a feminist because they act like an idiot. I'm not going to say that's not a true feminist, but I'm going to say any group has idiots who represent that group badly, who do stupid things. Like, when you look at groups like Antifa, like the core concept there is brilliant. Yeah, obviously everybody wants to be anti-fascist.
Oh, that's definitely what I'm going to have to disagree with you on.
What, you think nobody should be anti-fascist? Just as a core principle?
I think being an anti-fascist is fine. I think being anti-fa is entirely a different thing.
Exactly. Being an anti-fascist at its core principle is 100% correct. I agree with you. The way Antifa behave themselves is pure stupidity. It's idiocy, and we'll definitely do an Antifa discussion at some stage.
Yeah. Okay. Deal.
But yeah,
so
I
how,
think
how do you want to go forward from this then? So this is a good hour and a half. This is, or an hour, however long we're doing this for.
Well, we maintained 13 viewers from early till late.
Yeah,
so
what the fuck, people? Who the hell are you even?
I thought we'd lose people, that they'd get bored with us because we weren't shouting at each other, but we seem to have made it. So I think what we do is we wrap up.
Yeah.
I think it has been proven you are a feminist, so that's a good point to leave it. And what we do is we get feedback. We ask people, was it too long? Was it too short? Should we have gone on? Should we have had more research done for our points?
Yeah, for sure.
Should we have someone off on the side who's Googling shit for us? Because that'd be super fucking handy if somebody wants to volunteer.
So like I certainly, my partner is a feminist, and she was very upset about the nature of this podcast.
Oh,
but
Yvonne would describe herself as a feminist.
Oh, totally. But so
how is she going out with you?
Well, you see, this is my point. The idea that you have to be part of the in-group to be acceptable to the group. That's another issue I have with it. It's like, oh, if you're not a feminist, then you're against us. It's like,
no, I wouldn't be of that view. I wouldn't be of but I think when it comes to something like feminism, which it's like, I'm not a racist, and someone's like, oh, I don't really want that label. It's like, well, when it's something that is so clearly and obviously good, if you're disagreeing with that label, I think you have an issue.
No,
I think your issue
is
that, well, you say you believe in the core principles of feminism. Most of the examples I went through, you agreed with them happening.
Yeah,
when
because
we gave you evidence,
those
you
principles
didn't refute it.
Are principles on their own. They are not feminism. They're not.
But all of those principles, when grouped together and defined by action, is what a feminist is.
No, but that's just because you've assigned that label to it. But it's also a humanist. It's also an egalitarian. It's also, in some, if you squint, it's also a Christian. It's like these aren't unique principles.
I think you're getting a bit broad there.
No, but like that's my point though. You're ascribing to me your ideology because I, in some ways, agree with elements of your ideology, but ultimately it's an ideology, and I don't tend to side with ideological viewpoints as a general rule. Like the closest thing to an ideology I have is liberalism. I do believe in those core principles, and you could say I'm the idea of equal rights is actually a liberal view. I'm more a liberal than I would be a feminist. But anyway, this is whatever. I will concede.
I think that you're just getting into semantics.
Yeah, it's a semantic issue.
Yeah, we're not going to argue over the definition of a word.
Yeah, but anyway, so good podcast. Good first one. Let's do this again.
No, I enjoyed it. I'd be up for it again. Let's see what the feedback is, and
cool.
We'll decide the format tomorrow when we get all the feedback from everyone and see how it goes.
Alrighty. I might actually have to go read all these comments. There's a few comments here that I didn't actually get to. But anyway.
I didn't really get to read them all because it was just too distracting, but I can see Jur giving out.
Manspreading?
I did see incorrect in large capital letters at one point. I don't know which one that was addressed.
I think it was me. It was me. It was obviously me because it was what's his face? Jack.
Jack tells me I'm wrong as well, don't worry. Like, I might have been inaccurate in something I said. Like I said, next time will be more researched.
All right. Anyway, good talk.
Thank you very much, and have a good evening. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll sort this stuff out.
Laters.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.